Welcome to Flow of Miracles Reflective Moments. Today I will be speaking about childhood. And this is a new series because childhood really features quite prominently in many spiritual practices because childhood wounds, inner child healing, and taking care of your childhood lessons is very important on many different levels. And of course, also in Western medicine, the idea that things happen in our childhood that have long standing repercussions is one that is old as well. So, today I will be having a general talk with three general reflective questions to see if there's still childhood work for you to be done and to think and reflect on your own childhood. So the first reflective question is, how was my childhood? And for many people, this is a quite loaded question. Sometimes I see people tell me that they had a great childhood because they feel it's disloyal to their parents to actually admit that things happen. Even if we would have loving, gentle parents, they still made mistakes. Even if you feel like your childhood was pretty good, you obviously also had some situations that were difficult for you because life isn't perfect and you might have encountered problems at school, maybe with friendships or in romantic relationships that caused you some harm. And of course, if you feel that your childhood was super, super perfect, your parents were perfect, your situation was perfect, it might still be that your parents were busy with ancestral patterns that were unhealthy and you actually also absorbed those. I won't be speaking about ancestral problems in depth because this will be the childhood series and I will be back with ancestral information later. Of course, if you like to know more about that, you can find it also on the blog and you can find some in my spiritual column that is in Dutch. But yes, when we reflect on our childhood, it is sometimes really, really hard to be honest. And it also sometimes means that people are trying to minimize the harm they suffered because they feel it doesn't measure up. If you were born and raised in a family with two parents who were loving, you might feel you have no reason to complain compared to somebody who was raised in much more difficult situations where there was physical, mental, or sexual abuse. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't actually take care of your own childhood wounds and that you should actually just say, oh, everything was perfect, everything was great. So let's not compare ourselves to other people whose wounds might be different or deeper or difficult, but let's look at our own childhood honestly and make sure that we can reflect on that in a way that is actually helpful to us. Also, remind yourself that everybody has a different childhood. One of the things I see a lot is that people are angry because they are born in a family with more than one child. And they forget that every child has different needs and different problems, and every child will get a different set of parents. And what they really would like is for their siblings to agree with them that dad was too strict or mom was too controlling, and their siblings have completely different experiences in their childhood. That's because parents usually learn. It's because parents connect to each of their children in different ways. And because, of course, circumstances in families can change. The eldest child might have wounds surrounding suddenly having to take on more responsibility that is never asked of a younger child. Some areas you might see struggle in, like financial, usually don't take 20 or 25 years, which means that one child might have much more opportunities than another child, even when they're born in the same family. So do not hold your siblings into the same standards that you would hold your parents to, and allow them to have their own childhood experience. So that segues into the second reflective question: how is the bond with my parents? One of the ways to really reflect on how positive you really think your childhood was is understanding how the bond with your parents is. If you have a bond in which you can freely communicate, in which you feel loved and cherished, in which you feel supported, this is a no-brainer, and this series is probably not for you, or maybe there's still some things you can do, but not as much as you would expect from people who have a fraught or difficult bond with their parents. That's because when we move from childhood to adult, we need to build an adult to adult bond with our parents. And if there were difficulties in our childhood, it's really hard to get a healthy bond there. It also means that if our parents are still struggling with their own wounds and they harmed us in our childhood, whether that was on purpose or not, it becomes much more difficult to have a great bond with them in adulthood as well, because they are still responding from a place of woundedness and pain, making it really difficult to have a free communication or to feel loved and supported. So, when we reflect on our bonds with our parents, we also see how much resentment we still have. Sometimes we're still angry with our parents about the things that happened to us, and we cannot have a healthy bond. Sometimes we still feel like we don't know our parents at all because there's very limited connection. Sometimes there's still harm coming from that bond. You can also check out the cord cutting video about parents if you feel like there's still unhealthy energy between you and your parents. But it is so important to understand that to have finally healed childhood wounds, we should be able to have a healthy bond with our parents, whether that means that we have one that is tight, healthy, and full of love, or we have one where we are free from their expectations and we might just have to love them from afar because they are stuck in addiction or other harmful behaviors that mean that we do not need to connect with them on deeper levels. So, last but not least, this is, of course, the final question: do I need healing for childhood wounds? So, by reflecting on the earlier questions, you would probably already have a good idea if there's something there that you feel needs healing. You might have already worked with inner child energy. I have also a manifestation meditation for that. Or you might have already talked with other people about your childhood. You might even have been quite discouraged that all mental health professionals want to do is talk about your childhood while you want to move on. But it is very vital that we actually heal our childhood wounds. That is because if we don't do it, problems that seem unrelated actually become quite complicated. You might try to make your boss your parent. You might try to make your partner your parent. You might miss vital skills that you never got in your childhood, making it really hard to build a stable adult life. There are many reasons why childhood wound healing is so important. It's because in our childhood, we're supposed to get a stable upbringing, a way to learn the skills we need for our adult lives, and to actually build connections that are loving, lasting, and healthy. And if we don't do that or are not able to do that because of harm being done to us, it is sometimes really hard to start doing that when we're adult ourselves. But while it's not our fault that there are childhood wounds, it is our responsibility to heal them. Because once they are healed, we'll become happier, healthier, and more wonderful people. And that only means that we can connect with even more happy people. And we have much more fulfilled and satisfying lives. So even if you feel you are tired of digging into your past, digging into your childhood, I still highly recommend that if these reflective questions actually gave you a lot of pain and upset, to listen to the rest of the series and learn what you can do to still have a good childhood. I love the quote, "It's never too late to have a good childhood," because it means that while we cannot change the past, we can change how we feel about that. And forgiveness, letting go, healing, and actually giving yourself what you needed as a child are all wonderful, wonderful techniques in making sure that you had the childhood you deserve.